Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all, welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you once again, and we're going to have a lively chat today. But I want to remind everyone that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. This does not constitute working with a licensed marriage or licensed mental health therapist of any type. So you should definitely seek out help in your local area. And if you want to talk to some of our guests, make sure you stay to the end to be able to get their input and their suggestions if they can work with you, or if you're in their area, or at least be able to consult with them for more information later on. So today's conversation is in some ways a continuation, but also a new take on it, as we have a returning guest and a new guest. Talking much more about the world of video games and basically working with children and family around video games and things that we need to start being more aware of in how we approach and think about the situations that are going on with our clients, with our families. And even these are useful questions for you parents who might be listening to this to start asking yourselves before you bring your kid in to work with one of us. So let's go ahead and meet our guests today. So, as you might remember from in our beginning episodes, I think it's like episode 4, one of our returning guests is Monet Goldman, who is a therapist here in the San Francisco Bay. He worked on developing virtual ways of conducting play therapy using video games in therapy, and he joins with kids in their preferred game as long as it helps them build social and communication and self-regulation skills. Before the COVID pandemic, he was a play therapist taking kids to parks, ice skating, and rock climbing. When the pandemic hit, he shut down his in-person activities and turned to the virtual activities to continue providing social play therapy over the telehealth. He's also listed in the Washington Post talking about video game and therapy, especially during the pandemic, but frankly, it's useful anytime year-round. Welcome, Monet.
Thank you, Perry. Glad to be back. I guess with that intro, I do have a few positive accolades to add on. I also got featured in Wired magazine, and I think not too shortly after our interview. So things are ramping up. Yeah.
Very nice. And our other guest, who's our new one for this one, is James Walls. James holds the title of Clinical Director and Lead Therapist of Alliance Mental Health. He oversees the growth of statewide telehealth programs in his state, which I believe is Missouri.
So it's going to be Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, sorry.
Yes, sir.
He has obtained bachelor's degrees from John Brown University in Child and Family Studies with a minor in psychology. He even went on to pursue a master's in human relations from the University of Oklahoma. John reports his passions for therapy as extending to all ages and stages with the advancement of teletherapy. He is able to provide this services across the state of Oklahoma. And he's also licensed in Colorado and provides telehealth therapy to patients there across the state. In regards to working in mental health, James says, I like the personal growth that this job requires and the wealth of knowledge that our agency has. We had a diverse population of therapists that are each unique and comes from various walks of life. This diversity, ingenuity, and drive allows us to ensure that all families in the state of Oklahoma are provided with quality mental health care. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you, Perry. I appreciate you.
Not a problem. So, Monet, if you want to give us an update, and James, if you want to give us a chance to understand how you guys got here and all of this. So let's start with Monet, and then we'll go to James.
Okay. Well, I've actually been reflecting on my, journey experience working with kids in kind of play and athletics. And actually, it probably started when I was, right out of high school, and I was coaching my alma mater wrestling team and going to community college. And and wrestling in college. And then also, running kids classes, summer camps for the Stanford Judo program. And I think in a lot of ways, I was always searching for, ways of using sports, athletics as kind of a medium or vehicle for, emotional development, social development. Always great to win championships, titles, but most likely it's not going to happen. And so my focus was really, okay, how can I maybe help the mental health of these kids, of myself too, which was kind of what athletics helped me with. And so in grad school, my project was actually, therapeutic martial arts program, because I was working with kids in, kind of juvenile justice programs, probation, foster care, and, going on hikes and walks with them, and really just trying to find ways of connecting with them, because so many of these guys were resistant to talk therapy, sitting down in a room, and just wanting to find better ways to meet clients where they were, in appropriate ways for them. And of course, then the pandemic hit and had to find something new. And so I really tapped into, okay, what am I doing here? I'm playing video games, I'm isolated, but boy, am I having fun. Am I able to finally not have all this anxiety and worry about what's happening in the world? And then I made that connection to how I can help my kids or clients, really.
Very nice. What about for you, James?
Yeah, I think too, agreeing with Monet, is the pandemic changed a lot of things for us, especially as therapists, even as it extends to our clients. Once the pandemic hit, we really had to quickly change our directive and perspective on how we interact and work with our clients. Many of them were switching over to virtual type schools. And as I started, working with clients that were at home all the time over teletherapy and stuff, in which I had done teletherapy for several years before that, one consistent thing was, trying to meet them where they're at. What are their interests? What are they doing? And just talk therapy just wasn't getting there. And, and one of the things that you hear from parents is all they want to do is play games. All they want to do is play games. And it really set with me as, thinking about my own kids and their interactions with video games and stuff, and how we have such a beautiful parent-child interaction, and it bonds us. And so, I just kind of took the step out there to try various games such as, Roblox or Fortnite and things like that. And what I started seeing was they were opening up, and they were very hesitant, where they were just would not go into deep things. You get them in a game environment, they would tell me everything, and so trying this new thing was, especially here in Oklahoma, was very new, was very different. And so it caused me to reach out there to find other clinicians, other therapists that were like-minded, that were trying to explore this new medium of counseling. And that's actually how I met up with Monet, just doing some Google research, and I found a news article of his, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm looking for. And so, we were able to connect and do just a consultation meeting, and things just started falling into place from there. And it was really refreshing for me to know that there's other people out there that are trying different things and trying to reach these kids and these families in a different environment versus just bringing them in the office and setting them down in a chair and, or getting, us that are done play therapy for years, we know what it's like to have our knees dirty, getting on the ground and just trying new things. And it's just been really beautiful.
Very nice. So one of those things that we're here to talk about is that aspect of video games playing, and especially its interaction with the family and such. So where would you guys like to start this conversation at?
Yeah, I think, so much maybe skepticism, questions, that usually comes top of mind. And I've had to really think about, okay, how do I meet the parents where they are so that they understand that I'm just doing more than playing Fortnite, Roblox with them. Right? And, it's, I think, helpful to maybe explain what therapy is, because a lot of parents will come in like, okay, like he needs to talk about how bad school was. And it's like, well, he's 8 and I'm not sure if, that's maybe where he's, developmentally at right now. And, I think there's too much emphasis on maybe the verbal communication and looking at, hey, how are these other ways of connecting and presenting behavior, presenting emotions through play. And that's kind of what maybe therapists are trained to do, is, okay, looking at maybe the underlying themes, the metaphors, providing that space where they can feel safe, comfortable, open enough to express, hey, this is, what's going on. Or especially with Roblox, you have like these avatars, these kind of, block dolls. And I've had kids, as we're playing, label me as a family member that had passed away. And then I can then be their family member and interact with them and have this, nurturing interaction. So I think it's helpful to also lay out, hey, like this also takes time, to get to that spot. Sometimes takes months, but it's helpful, and it's it's worth it. So.
And what about for you, James?
Yeah, I agree. And first thing that Monet mentioned was the questions and the skepticism regarding gaming interaction and stuff. Because what you find is you have a lot of parents that have negative interactions or negative thoughts regarding the gaming environment. And I think with everything, it's having boundaries and limit with it. And one thing that I definitely do is try to develop those boundaries and limits with the children. And and I think too is that, as I said earlier, we're all trying to meet our clients where they are. And something that I've also tried to include is encouraging our parents to really reach into this type of interaction. Because one thing I often hear from my clients is, I wish mom and dad would play with me. I wish mom and dad would play a video game with me. I wish mom would play a video game with me, and so encouraging the family to try something a little bit different. They may not be able to, and I think Monet said it beautifully, they may not be able to, as an 8-year-old, verbally express what they're feeling, but they can express themselves in other mediums through gaming or interaction. And it doesn't always just have to be video games. We find this, obviously even as in play therapy, board games, that they just like that physical interaction, and I also think about the way that I learn. I'm audio and visual learning. And so when I see something, it helps me to hear it as well, and so for kids, they can't just verbalize what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. And so using these mediums are really opening them up to a way that they can communicate. And I think that all of us, if we would probably agree that if we would just sit back and observe a child and the way that they interact with their friends, they do a lot of interaction through technology, whether it is making videos or creating things. And, we have to really embrace that. And as adults, kind of come up with a better understanding of how can we be part of that with them.
All right. So something I'm hearing as an overall thread here And is that some of those things that we need to be focusing on are not so much the kids themselves, it's actually the parents, the adults. That, I mean, yeah, there is issues definitely with the kids. Not saying that this is all just the kids. This is also the parents. This is also the adults that they are in relationship with. Because this was something that happened in a consultation group I was with, and we were talking about a case a while ago where the parent had come to the therapist and asked how could they get more attention and get their kid to do these things, and household chores and so forth. And one of the things that was also going on was there was disruption in the parent relationship. And the parent that wanted to have these changes was the parent that had actually the worst relationship with the kid. So this brings us back to that standpoint is it's very easy for a lot of parents to say the kid's having a problem without actually looking at how much they are also involved in the environment and the situation and the relationship with their kid who's not listening to them.
Well said. I've definitely worked in teams, where I'm a therapist amongst, 3 or 4 other mental health professionals, and one of those is parent coach, working with the parent and the child. And, oftentimes the parent needs therapy. And, when I start therapy with the child, sometimes it's revealed to the parents that, okay, we also need a family therapist here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bigger dynamic. So sometimes we are that first step in this larger process for the family and the parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think when we were discussing doing this, you had an experience that I think was most telling along this lines about what's going on, not just with the kid, but especially with the parent. Do you remember that particular one?
It's funny because when you mentioned that, I'm thinking of like one that I've had every other week since then.
Oh,
it just okay, let me think back, parse through, it's just telling of like, hey, this is a constant. This is, and if as a parent you are connecting with this or you're feeling ashamed, like don't feel ashamed. Like this is pretty universal, and your suffering is shared in this way. But yeah, no, it's clear, and it is really interesting. I think a lot of parents' expectations, it's hard to match where the child is at because their child is changing and developing so fast in so many different ways. And I really feel privileged to see a part of their kid really shine through. And unfortunately, the parents want to experience that, see that too. But then what they're seeing is, they're not cleaning the room. They're shutting down, but they're shooting daggers with their eyes, or, there's a lot of school issues, and, having to work through all that is a process.
And the same thing for us as therapists when we're working with them, because I think that was the experience that I was kind of mentioning. What was going on with you during a certain session that made you just showed what was going on in your head? Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
I think if I could go back to that, and I like to think that maybe I've done better. So if I were to coach myself as a therapist,
but that's what we're. So as I recall, you were talking about an occasion when you were playing with some of the video game with some of the kids. It was, I think, a new video game for you, and the inner monologue that was going on for you as you were trying to play the game. That one.
That's right. Okay, very good. That's specific. Yeah, I think that's right. The shame, oh man, I'm not good enough. I'm getting angry. And so, okay, I'm experiencing a lot of transference, like my own stuff as a kid, not feeling good enough in this game. And also as the adult and the therapist, an expectation that I should be better than this elementary school kid in this game. But, he was super kind. And so there was a lot of my own emotional dysregulation coming in. And so that made me think, okay, this is probably why it's really hard for parents to jump into these games. There's family hierarchies, there's insecurities, but it can really be an opportunity for parents to self-reflect, but also to give the child autonomy and that ability to communicate, cooperate, work together, show you their powers, which they're really proud of.
I think that we've brought up some really good points, and something that I enjoy or notice in there when we're talking about cooperation, and what you can do in this gaming environment is developing really critical skills, such as cooperation or social interaction or integrity. Oftentimes something, the kids will want to make up their own rules versus what the rules of the games are. And, and I do hear some feedback when we do see some parent interaction, and the kids like, well, yeah, my parents will play with me, but then they get frustrated and they get mad at the game, or all they want to do is just beat me, and I think that there's some, kind of going on along with what Monet said is, sometimes we're playing these kids and they just demolish us with that. And, as an adult, when I play with clients or even my own children, I gauge their emotional response regarding what game we're playing or what interaction we're having. And I can think of a situation with my son, one of my sons, one of the twins. We were playing a basketball game on the PlayStation, and I was just really having a good game. Like, I was just having a good game. And he was getting emotionally dysregulated because he was trying so hard. He was working so hard. And I ended up throwing the game, and he had no clue that I was doing that. And I did that not knowing. I was just trying to help him out and just kind of help him regulate himself. But the interaction after the game, it wasn't throwing anything in my face. He's like, that was such a good game. I tried so hard. And I'm like, I didn't think I was going to do it, but I was able to do it, and, that was a growth moment for him. He doesn't know what I did, and he still thinks that we had a really competitive game. He came out successful, and he learned something from that. He learned competition. He learned cooperation. He learned how to regulate his emotions. I do also kind of want to just address maybe a little bit about the difficulty I also see with parents. And I think it really, for me, stemmed back to seeing a lot of people doing virtual school, it's going from a brick and mortar to a virtual setting. And, one of the things quickly that happened was the school districts really wanted the parents to be what was called like parent educators. And so as the kids were doing their schoolwork, the parents were really supposed to be the educator part of it, or in their education, and then the school teachers kind of reinforced what was going on. And I really saw a lot of parents struggling with this, or saying, well, I don't send them to school, so I'm the teacher. That's the teacher's job. And I think we do see very much a disconnect of parents that probably are unsure of their own capabilities, not knowing how to do, maybe it's Common Core curriculum, or maybe having struggles doing just basic arithmetic and punctuation or grammar or whatever it is. And so they come into these situations having their own hard feelings and their own struggles. And I really do think that plays a part in this interaction. If you're trying to be a parent, and maybe you've put yourself up there on this pedestal where I'm always right, I have to do everything correctly, and you get in a game and your kid just demolishes you, what are they experiencing? What are they feeling? And if you don't have the skill set to regulate your own emotions, how are you going to be able to teach your kids to regulate theirs within a gaming environment?
Very much so. And I think there's also the standpoint of how many parents really understand that that's part of what their actual task is here. Not just, keeping the roof over their head and putting clothes on the back and making sure they're fed. It's helping develop regulation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we're not even going to touch Common Core. I get some of the things that they want to do with that. There's also stuff, it's like, you're making this way more complicated than it needs to be. And especially with some of us that had to deal with the other ways of learning as well. But that's a conversation for a different time. Because the other thought that came as we started this conversation, I don't know how many of you have Netflix, the 90s show suddenly popped into my head. I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I was suddenly thinking about the differences between the 70s show, which is its precursor, and this 90s show. And even more going back to that subject of sitting with the kids, playing with them.
Yeah.
How much are we also looking at the standpoint of generational differences because of living experiences?
Absolutely.
And living experiences that did not get processed well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, when we talk about those generational experiences, between even the 70s and the 90s looks very different. And as we, engage technology in that, I guess this kind of reminds me back when I was a kid, and the VCR was really popular, and my grandparents, and even my mother, she couldn't figure out how to hook up the VCR, and they would call me in, and I was, 11, 12 years old, and having to hook up a VCR to a television for them that was pretty simple. And I think as we move into the 2000s and even the 2020s, as technology has changed so much, that we still have that generational disconnect that parents don't understand the technology. And that actually, I've heard that question. I don't understand why he enjoys these games. I don't understand why she likes to play this. And I think that we really forget it's not, I don't know that we really need to understand why. I think what we really need to understand or really look at is being a part of that. And how does this help them, or how does this maybe impair them? And I do really love going back to that, teaching our kids the emotional regulation part of it, because if we don't teach them, who else is going to teach them? And I think that we see that a lot is parents struggle with their own emotions, that they really have a hard time teaching their kids those emotions. But yeah, Perry, bringing up that generational aspect, we still see that, just that disconnect between generations and technological advances. I mean, we're not going to ever go back to a time where we didn't have technology. And so, we often have to just continue to learn. And, I truly believe that we're all students of life, and our one main goal in life is to continue to learn and continue to educate ourselves.
Well said. Yeah, I think as parents or adults, having to reframe, and kind of redefine what is maybe the positive outcome we're looking for. If you go into a game and you lose and you feel ashamed, that's punishment, and you're less likely to go back and try to game or try to watch your kid, and kind of changing what you're looking for is, oh, hey, okay, I did this. I went out and I played a round of my kid's favorite game, and that can, reinforce you showing up again, and then you get better, and, being able to highlight what maybe winning looks in different ways, showing up, the teamwork aspect. I played Fortnite with a kid, and we took second, and then we said, okay, let's try and win the next one. And we took 26th. And, if we only looked at the rankings, we'd feel like, okay, we did terribly. But then at the same time, I was like, like, you covered me really well. Or like, oh man, you went back to save me and revive me. You didn't have to do that. And kind of looking at different areas of, how one can be helpful and encouraging to another person, and, not looking at that outcome and that placement, which I see a lot in competitive environment like the Bay Area. Everybody's you got middle schoolers having panic attacks because they're not going to somehow get the best grade in middle school grades. And I have to explain to him, like, nobody's going to see those grades. Like, focus on the study skills, the sleep habits, the things.
Yeah. Monet, you actually just said something when you're talking about, winning a game. I had an experience. Matter of fact, it was just not long after I maybe spoken in December, and I was playing a game with one of my clients, a boy, and we got on. It was Call of Duty. I think, we were playing Battle Royale or one of those, and everything just kind of clicked in this game with both of us, and we ended up winning the Battle Royale or winning the game. And he said, "That's the first time I've ever won this." And I said, "Hey, buddy, guess what?" He goes, "What?" I said, "That's the first time I've ever won this too." And it was kind of just like a beautiful moment that he's like, "Wow, we won this game." And, we didn't expect it. We just went in there and was playing, everything just lined up correctly. And we both just kind of had a beautiful experience of winning this together. And, it was just a really cool moment. I also do think, recently, I think it was last week, I was playing Roblox with another client, a girl, and we were on, I think they're called obbies or OBs, where you go in, you have to jump on these locations, and they might be moving or swinging, and you have to go, traverse these little obstacles. And, my client's going through all these obstacles, great. And I'm still, 15 minutes later, I'm still at the beginning. I keep on falling and have to reset. And she's like, "Where are you at, James? Where are you at?" And I said, "Well, I'm still at the beginning." So, and it's the great thing is they're encouraging me. They're like, "You can do it. Just, okay, go over here and do this. Here, hang on. I'm going to jump all the way down and start back all over with you," And so we find these environments, or we find these situations where our clients are encouraging us. And those are life skills that are tremendously needed, where they can take those and learn how to encourage their peers, encourage their friends in situations, and it's so unique, and it's so great to see how we can use this medium, and it's developing these positive, skills.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
And I think that's a great place for us to take a break on that note. So stay tuned for our second half. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Monet Goldman, licensed marriage and family therapist, and James Walls. James Walls. Sorry, I'm completely blanking for some reason. LPC. That's all here on Untying Knots, Minds, and Souls. So stay tuned, folks.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it, so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Where can you listen to some of the world's top life coaches ready to dish out success tips and entrepreneurial guidance? The Voice America Empowerment Channel will do just that. Whether it's personal growth, building a better business, or inspirational life stories, make it a daily habit to tune into our programs. From weight loss and personal branding to law of attraction and increased happiness, you'll find it every day at voiceamericaempowerment.com. The Voice America Empowerment Channel. It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello, all. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. We're here for our second half, here with Monet Goldman, licensed marriage and family therapist, and James Walls LPC. And I'm also Perry Clark, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So we've been talking a bit about the idea of video games, what goes on with kids, but much more we're talking about what's going on with their parents, because that's one of the key factors in addressing any of these things. So I'm curious then, as we were talking about in the other half, about the idea of the skills and the things that are actually going on here that parents can actually call on and recognize, because in many ways they're having to do a bunch of those things in their daily lives as well. But what comes up to you, and what comes up with the standpoint of there are other skills that are being found in the game playing?
Yeah, so I think the ability to draw parallels between the very positive, communication, social, emotional regulation abilities from the game to other areas of one's life, be it with, a soccer team, classes, in childhood. But this can also be done, which I also work with adults too. And in the professional world, when people become project managers or they're managing a team. And I think James's example of this super helpful, collaborative, kind client. And it's like, okay, there's this ability for a coach or manager to come down to their intern or new hire, get them up to speed and help them. And, that's I think what our society needs, away from maybe the horrible bosses that I'm sure we've either seen in media or experienced ourselves. And so you can really, cultivate, I think, a healthier society, by building these skills here.
Yeah. I think, one common theme that we hear, since we've been talking today is emotional regulation. And I think that there is a lot of skills that parents overlook, and a lot of skills that if they just had a little bit more understanding of where their child is, they could really jump into this whole lesson idea and developmental idea of meeting their children's needs, and I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, seeing some recent games that I've played with my kids, and even, like chess games. And there's a lot of skills that go into chess, whether you're playing it digitally or on a chessboard. But these skills that we're looking at, whether it's critical thinking or problem solving skills or moral reasoning skills, these are some skills that parents can really relate to. And if they really watch their kids and their children, they can really see that their children are trying to figure out these obstacles. And what I mean by that, obviously we know that some gaming environments, whether they're doing online play and they're interacting with other people, and they start maybe hearing people say things that they shouldn't be saying. How do you interact with that? Do you, as a parent, do you just kick them off the game, or do we limit their ability to hear that, or do we allow our kids to interact with that? And so there's a lot of questions that our parents can start asking themselves of, what's coming out here that's good, because it's not all bad. Mm-hmm. And so the other part is, those critical thinking, is my child having integrity? Is my child being courteous? How are they figuring out this game that I can't even figure out? There's a lot of life skills that are coming in these games that our parents can really jump into it. And I think a lot of that starts with the research aspect of what the gaming is, or what the game is. And, that's one thing that I do with my children is, if, there's a game that they're interested in, or they're like, they ask me for a game and I have to approve it for them on my phone or something, if they're downloading on their iPad or, their device. But I always look up and see what that game is. I'm really curious, and I think that also brings up, something several years ago, I was in marriage counseling, and just something that this marriage therapist said to me that has stuck with me since then is maintain curiosity. And I think if our parents ask themselves, how can I be more curious about my kid and my child and who they are? I think that we can see that divide strengthen. I think we can see that divide diminish. And I guess what I meant, that the relationship strengthening, maintain that curiosity,
Which gets naturally into more questions that we want to actually encourage all these listening parents to consider, beyond asking, why do they enjoy this? Why are they interested in this? And I will say, one of those things that helps to make this questioning work is you need to pause.
Absolutely.
Pause, take a moment and breathe when you ask these questions. If you're constantly running, and heaven forbid, we know these things, life things need to be done, whether it's getting the stuff done for your job or getting the laundry out of the laundry before it gets either wet or dry. We fully respect that those things need to happen, but nothing says you can't take 5 seconds to breathe and ask these questions. Now, what other questions come to mind that might be useful to have parents start asking?
Yeah, I think what I've started to look for, and that's come up as I play with the kids, is, where are maybe the more logical, strategic parts of their brain being flexed? The problem solving, the planning, right? They're saving a game, and you ask parent, they don't clean the room, they don't do this, they don't do that, they don't think before they act. But then in the game, you actually see quite the opposite. You see, quite a mature development of these skills, and especially with kids with ADHD. You definitely. I was having a session with a kid and parent, and it was very different. Once I came in, the parent, of course, was doing their natural thing, questioning, judging. I think that's what comes out, right? The judgment, and I think the kids are very sensitive to that. And so, I'm there, and I'm doing the opposite, right? Being curious, and they're organizing their Pokemon or their gear in a certain order. I was like, oh yeah, that's really interesting how you're doing that, and wow, that's really effective what you did. And then he starts playing. Yeah, I start with the lowest level, and that way it winds down my opponent's resources, and then I can come in with my bigger Pokemon, and I'm like, wow, that's really smart. And then the parents there are like, yeah, that's actually really smart. And then they kind of quieted down and started observing. And so you can really, I think, model these things together. And this is for the therapists out there listening, trying to just having, I think, that silence, or that nice quiet time is a huge change for the family, when there's always so much noise and criticism, judgment. So just something to consider there. As Monet was speaking, I was actually kind of thinking of a concept, when we're talking about this organizational aspect. One of my sons, that he really enjoys Call of Duty, what he does with the weapon systems on there, like, he takes pride in it. He takes pride in customizing the colors of the weapons on there, or he's researching and figuring out what the best setup is, what the best
layout's going to be. And that actually even goes into the character, the avatar that he uses. He takes a lot of pride in developing that avatar and what that avatar looks like. The same thing goes with, if he's playing Fortnite or, something something like that. And so, I think about like that, if he can go in there and, and I'm thinking that's on as a parent, if he can go in there and organize the stuff, how can I transition that to how can you go in there and organize your room similar? And so, if we take that pause and really look at what they're doing, there's a lot of crossover between what they're doing in gaming and how we can utilize that in their day-to-day experience. The other question I'd like to see parents ask is, how can I be more childlike? How can I be more curious? How can I be more connecting? How can I be more understanding? And, I think part of that goes to just try. Just try. We always know that adage, if you do the same thing that you've always done, you're going to get the same result. You have to do something different to get a different result. Just give it a try. It's not going to hurt. And you might be surprised of what you get by that simple interaction or that simple, and it doesn't even have to be on a gaming world, as far as on the internet or through a system. That might be a board game, that might be a card game, and just kind of go back to your own inner child and have some fun. Go out there and play. Go out, maybe go outside if you have a trampoline, jump on the trampoline, be silly, go shoot some baskets, and it just, the big aspect is you have to do something different, go make your kids laugh. There was an incident last night. I heard one of my son coming out of his bedroom. I actually had called him. I heard him open the door. He was playing VR, and I was laying on the couch, and I was just, I had my arms up and my legs up and just had a silly look on my face. And he comes in the living room and he just starts laughing at me. And, and part of that was I purposely did that to connect. He had a kind of a rough day at school, and I just wanted to see him laugh a little bit. And, it's just trying different things. And I think that's a one big question our parents can ask themselves is, how can I try better? How can I try something new?
Because I think one of the other core things in all of this too is the standpoint for those that are very fond of the love languages. All of this also comes back to around the idea of quality time.
Absolutely.
That and for a lot of kids, the first and most important thing is quality time, as well as then I'd say words of affirmation, but quality time first, then the words of affirmation.
Yeah.
I think it's, sorry, go ahead, James.
I was, thank you, Monet. I was just thinking about a time that my son was having me play VR with him, and we were playing, I think it was Gorilla Tag or something. And, just that interaction with him, of him teaching me Gorilla Tag was like, he was so excited, explaining all these things to me. And it's that quality time, that they're engaging with us,
So I think that's a great place for us to go ahead and wrap up here. So if parents, you or other therapists want to get in touch with you to ask some questions or get consultation on working with some of their kids and their families, where can they reach you?
Well, I do have a website called videogamecounseling.com. I do also run groups and have a great cohort of teens, and we really have a great time. I do also consultation with therapists and professionals trying to understand how they can use VR video games in their practice.
All right. And that listed as, what's the website address?
Videogamecounseling.com. Email is usually best. And I do have a YouTube channel, periodically updating some videos. I do have a training coming up in collaboration with Let's Play Therapy as well.
All right. And what's the YouTube channel?
I think it's also video game counseling. It's kind of sporadic. I am, seeing a lot of people. So I am also hiring therapists in the future to, learn this stuff and help families out there.
All right. And what about for you, James?
Yeah, the best way that that I can be reached at is my email, and that's going to be james.walls@alliancementalhealth.com. So james.walls@alliancementalhealth.us. So james.walls@alliancementalhealth.us. And unfortunately, I don't have a website or a YouTube page. Hopefully in the future, that's something that I most definitely would like to get going. But yeah, my email address is the best way for everybody to get a hold of me.
All righty. So we'll try to have those in the show notes and we'll go from there. So this has been Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist. We want to thank you for listening and thank you to these two gentlemen for coming here and working with us and trying to help us enjoy the video games with our kids, because we also want the parents to have fun too.
Absolutely.
Not just the kids. So stay tuned, folks, and we'll be back for another episode.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.
Want to see what Voice America is up to behind the scenes? Follow us on TikTok at Voice America Talk Radio.
Tune in to the Voice America Variety channel on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Voice America Variety broadcasts a diverse array of topics, reaching a global community. Our experts come from all walks of life, and the topics they discuss are everything from current events, arts and entertainment, leadership, parenting, relationships, self-improvement, career advice, and a variety of other topics. Check us out today. You're sure to find something of interest. Voice America Variety. Talk on today's hot topics.
A little birdie told me Voice America is on Twitter. Follow us at Voice America TRN.